It seems like everywhere you turn these days, AI is making headlines. It can feel like a tidal wave of information about AI's potential. But what about the limits? What's holding it back right now?
So, well, that's what we're going to be diving into today, going beyond the hype and really understanding the constraints on AI's capabilities.
Exactly. And to do that, we have two really interesting articles to dig into. One is from Towards AI, which is all about neural networks and their computational underpinnings.
And we'll also be looking at a piece from Rapid Innovation that examines some of the practical bottlenecks that are out there. And, so the emerging solutions people are working on.
So it seems like both articles agree that machine learning is really the core of all these recent AI advancements. It's this ability to learn from data, right? That's driving things like self-driving cars and, just about every field you can think of.
It's a powerful approach.
Yeah.
But it gobbles up computational resources. And the more complex the task you're trying to tackle with AI, the more data and processing power you need.
So that leads to a pretty crucial question, right? Like, are we hitting the ceiling of what our current tech can handle?
Yeah, and that's a good question.
The Towards AI article brought up a fascinating point. It was about the computational power of individual neurons in our brains. They were comparing neurons to the basic logic gates in computers.
It's a thought-provoking analogy. It really gets you thinking about the nature of intelligence, both biological and artificial. They found that a single neuron can be configured to act like a NAND gate.
Oh yeah, NAND gates. I vaguely remember those from my intro to computer science class way back when. What makes them so special again?
Well, you can actually use a NAND gate to build any other type of logic gate. They're like the fundamental building blocks of all digital circuits.
Ah, I see, like Lego bricks. You can combine them in endless ways to create all sorts of complex structures.
Oh, exactly.
But hold on, how can a neuron, a biological cell, actually function like a digital logic gate?
It is pretty remarkable. By very carefully controlling the inputs and outputs of a neuron, researchers have shown that it can do the same logical operations as a NAND gate.
Wow. So theoretically, does that mean a network of neurons could be incredibly powerful computationally? Like, could they even rival a supercomputer?
That's where the idea of Turing completeness comes in.
Okay, Turing completeness. Tell me more about that.
So if something is Turing complete, it means it can theoretically perform any calculation a modern computer can. Think about it. You could have any software program, from a simple calculator app to a complex climate simulation, all running within a network of neurons.
That's kind of blowing my mind right now. But
Yeah.
is that saying that our brains are actually Turing complete?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. But it's important to remember that theoretical possibility and practical feasibility are two different things. Just because a system could perform a computation doesn't mean it's efficient or even realistic. There's a huge difference between demonstrating a single neuron mimicking a NAND gate and having a network of neurons that can, actually think like a human.
Right. So when we talk about the limits of AI, it's not just about the raw power of our hardware. It's also about how effectively we can apply that power.
Precisely. And that brings us to those practical bottlenecks that the Rapid Innovation article highlighted.
Yeah, like limitations in processing power and the sheer amount of data these AI models need to chew through.
Right, those are some of the major hurdles.
Yeah.
But researchers are working on some really innovative solutions, and that's actually what we're going to dig into next.
Okay, so we know AI needs a lot of computational power. So what are some of the things people are working on to actually solve that problem? To get over those bottlenecks and really unlock what AI can do.
One of the coolest areas is neuromorphic computing, which, like it sounds, takes inspiration from the human brain, how it's structured, how efficient it is. It's about creating hardware that processes information more like our brains do, instead of relying on traditional computer chips.
So we're talking about actually creating artificial neurons and synapses
Yep.
that can talk to each other and learn, kind of blurring the lines between like biology and technology.
Exactly. And the potential benefits are huge. Neuromorphic chips could be way more energy efficient and faster at processing information, letting us do more complex stuff, but with less computational overhead.
The article from Rapid Innovation talked about a few different organizations doing some really interesting work in this area.
Oh, yeah.
Can you give us an example or two?
Sure. There's the Human Brain Project in Europe. They build these really detailed simulations of the human brain to try to understand how it computes and then use those insights to build neuromorphic hardware. And then over in the U.S., the National Nanotechnology Initiative is working with new materials and fabrication techniques to build brain-inspired computing devices. But like at the nanoscale, really, really tiny.
it's crazy to think we might actually be able to build AI that learns and adapts like we do. What else is being explored to address these computational limits?
Another biggie is creating more efficient algorithms. Remember how we were talking about how AI models often need tons and tons of data,
Yeah.
which can be really computationally expensive.
And just totally impractical in a lot of situations.
Exactly. So what if, instead of needing millions of data points, we could train AI models with way less data, like much smaller, carefully selected sets of data?
That'd be huge. It'd make AI way more efficient and accessible.
Oh, yeah. And researchers are getting closer. They're developing algorithms that can get more information out of each piece of data and generalize better, even from these smaller data sets.
That makes a lot of sense. And that would also help with concerns about data privacy too, right? You wouldn't need to gather as much data in the first place.
Right.
And we can't forget about cloud computing, right? Rapid innovation touched on how the cloud is becoming more and more important for providing the power and infrastructure that you need to develop and deploy AI.
Cloud computing is a game changer because researchers, startups, pretty much anyone can tap into these powerful computers on demand, without having to shell out tons of money for their own hardware. So this kind of democratization of AI tools is super important, to help innovation and make sure more people can participate.
So it's cool to see how all of these different approaches, brain-inspired hardware, better algorithms, the power of the cloud, they're all converging to help solve the challenges that AI has.
Yeah, it really is. And it's a super interdisciplinary field now, drawing from all sorts of areas. Computer science, neuroscience, material science, you name it.
That's what's going to help us unlock AI's potential. Going back to that neuron as NAND gate thing we talked about, if even a small network of neurons is that powerful in theory, imagine what's possible if we really figure it out.
It really gets you thinking, right?
It does.
We're still a long way from fully realizing the potential of bio-inspired computation. But exploring those limits can guide us toward totally new ways of developing AI.
It's a good reminder. We need to be realistic about AI's limitations, but also keep an open mind about what might be possible down the line.
Absolutely. By understanding the constraints and looking for those innovative solutions, we can approach AI in a smart way, with informed skepticism, but also with a sense of wonder.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground today, from the huge computational demands of AI, the limits of today's tech, and some of those really exciting solutions in development. What are the key takeaways for our listeners?
I think the biggest thing is, even though there's all this hype about AI, we need to have a solid understanding of the real challenges and opportunities.
Totally. AI is a lot more than just the flashy headlines and sci-fi predictions.
Right.
It's about really thinking about the computational constraints, looking for innovative solutions, and realizing that human ingenuity is essential in shaping the future of this really transformative technology.
And as we keep going deeper into the AI world, we got to keep asking questions, challenging assumptions, and staying up to date with the latest developments.
Before we wrap things up, I've got one last thought-provoking question for you and for our listeners. So we've been talking about how much potential there is, even in relatively small neural networks. But what happens as we keep pushing, scaling these networks up, making them bigger and bigger? Is there a point where we hit a wall, some ultimate limit where even the best technology just can't compute any further, like a limit imposed by the laws of physics themselves?
Whoa, that's a big question. It really takes us to the edge of what we understand scientifically. There are some theoretical limits on computation out there,
right?
Based on things like the speed of light and Planck's constant,
right?
Which, defines the smallest possible unit of energy.
Right.
And some physicists actually think there might be a limit to how much information can be processed within a given, volume of space-time.
So you're saying even with some crazy, futuristic, super efficient technology, there might be a point where we just can't fit any more computation into the universe. That's kind of wild to think about.
Yeah, it is a pretty profound thought. But whether those theoretical limits would actually apply to AI as we know it, well, that's still a big open question. But it definitely makes you think about the bigger picture. The connection between computation, information, and the fundamental laws of physics as we keep exploring what AI can do.
Okay, so maybe we'll leave that one for the physicists and philosophers to figure out. But for our listeners who want to learn more about AI's computational limits, like the practical stuff and the solutions people are working on, where should they go?
Well, the articles we talked about today are a great place to start. We'll put links to those in the show notes.
Perfect. And for anyone who's really interested in that cutting-edge neuromorphic computing stuff, Are there any organizations or resources you'd recommend?
Oh, definitely. The Human Brain Project is awesome. They've got tons of info on our website about their research, brain simulation, neuromorphic computing, all that. And then there's the National Nanotechnology Initiative. They're doing really cool stuff, combining nanotechnology and brain-inspired computing.
It's amazing how much information is out there and so accessible too. Who knows? Maybe one of our listeners will be inspired to make the next big breakthrough in AI computation.
You never know. The important thing is to stay curious, explore those resources and never stop asking questions.
I love that. This whole deep dive has really given me a fresh perspective on AI. Looking past all the hype, exploring the real limitations, but also seeing all the amazing work that people are doing to overcome them. Thanks for guiding us through this. It's a complex topic, but super fascinating.
My pleasure. I always enjoy these conversations. It's inspiring to see how passionate and curious people are about AI.
And to all our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of AI and computation. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep that curiosity alive.